and Dave Williams as well to join. Okay, I'm going to show you. I think we haven't seen what the input is, and I suppose you're making a very valid point, Jack, about the role of asset management in all of this. I was going to try and summarize and say what we're trying to do from a BIM perspective is look at what are the information requirements for pieces of equipment that are in the building. I think you're right. I don't think we need to be able to do computational fluid dynamics on smoke progress through a building. We rely, as people said, we rely on the experts to do that. But I think we need to have a look at the information requirements. Now I'm just going to see if there's a way that I can add a file into the chat, because that would be a super way for me to share this document with you. But then classically, of course, I can't upload things. So I'm going to have to do a totally in control. Hang on a minute. Just let me make sure I've got all the relevant screens shut. Smoke dampers, right, here we go. Right, okay, let me share my screen so you can see what we've got to work with. And so we're basically again, in summary, before anybody else crashes on the call and tells us what we're supposed to be doing endlessly,
but there is nothing presenting at the moment.
I'm just clicking on it. Sorry, it's coming through. Sorry, I had some screens open for a meeting I'm preparing for later today, so I just needed to make sure the sensitive ones were shut. Right, okay. So so what I've been given is a spreadsheet, and I can potentially email this to you all as well, actually, in just a second. So we can all have a look at a copy of this. And it's got 2 sheets, but we're going to be focused on the information sheets to start with. This has been sort of popped together from what we had. There was a floor plan given out to us, which we can have a look at. Actually, this has been developed a little bit. And these are the roles that we have through here. This is a bit of a different approach to what I've seen previously. Sorry, I was expecting this to be, we've just got a tick in the box, but I'm not sure if this is RACI style.
No.
I think we've simplified it from RACI.
Yeah, sorry, Alex, if I can just contribute there. Basically, we're not doing the full RACI. We're basically saying, simple question, who would provide that information?
Right, so, who's responsible for providing the information? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and the other point just before, these questions have all been raised through the roundtable workshops over the last year. So these are the information that have been requested by the people that have to do the inspections or have to do the are responsible. So therefore, I would. It doesn't really matter whether there's things on there that you don't think we ought to be collecting. It doesn't matter, because what we're going to be doing is filtering that according to different roles. So if, Jack, you don't want 95% of this information, that's not a problem, because somebody else does. Yeah, if that makes sense. So you don't need to see it.
So then why are we going through this to say who would do it? I'm not sure what value I would add here.
Where would you find that information from? Who would be the people? If there's information on there that you would find useful, where would you find it from? So the exercise is really to say who's the best person to actually provide that information. I'm going to have to dive that into another meeting.
Just checking. So looking at this, we're talking about new builds.
Yes. New builds.
Okay.
For a design and build contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in context, we've got 33 of these to chug through. I'm just trying to, Gary, change jobs. Are you still at A2 Dominion?
No, I work for Asta Housing Group now.
May I have your email address and I will email this to you?
Yeah, gary.bellinger@asta, which is aster.co.uk.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Not Asda, the store.
No, that's terrible. And Marzina, can I have your email address so I can share this with you as well?
Congratulations, Gary.
Thank you, mate.
Yes, it's my first name dot surname at thh.org.uk.
Just give me a second. That's fine. Right, I'll send this over in just a second. If you want to start having a look at the screen and having a thought about if there's any changes or comments that we want to put on.
I assume you've got my email address, Alex. Yeah.
Yes, I do, Dave. That's fine. Yeah.
Dave.williams@lidl.co.uk.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. Williams. No problem. Okay.
Yeah, I probably should say that you probably won't have much input from me. It seems like this meeting is really higher level in terms of so the colleagues from the new build section or the asset managers. Well, I'm the data, more like a senior data officer for the team. So sorry if I can't really have much input to a lot of the technical side.
No, I think that's, Monsignor, that's absolutely fine. And I think just to put it into context, so I'm a software provider, definitely not a building expert. Gary, Dave and Jack, do you want to introduce yourselves just briefly? I could introduce you, but.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gary Bellinger. Sorry, Jack. I'm Gary Bellinger. I am Property Investment Director at Astor Housing Group.
Jack.
Jack White, Technical Manager at Clarion.
And Dave.
Dave Williams, Asset Intelligence Manager at Origin.
So we're all high level. We're not technical. I think this is Jack's point. This is coming from the construction group. So, okay, so is there anything that we disagree with? Who is going to be giving us this information? So I suppose, so I'm looking at what's the base material. So I'm not going to disagree with
Alex,
anything. Yeah.
Alex, sorry, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it a case of who's going to give us, the housing association, the information, or is it a case of who is best placed to provide the information? Because, you know, in relation to what's the base material, I'd expect the manufacturer to be the person to provide that information, but they probably won't provide it to us. It probably would be the main contractor or the designer that would provide it to us. So which question is it?
Well, that's a very good point. It's how we answer it then, I suppose. I think it's who's going to be providing it to us.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Is how I take that, because ultimately, pretty much.
But then, why do we have client? What, are we providing it to ourselves? Are we generating it? Is that
That's
what
the
that one is?
developer/developer. There might be some stuff a bit later that we're going to be putting in about service and that sort of stuff. So there might be some elements that come in from client developer perspective. Here we go. Here's one. What other requirements are there in terms of acoustics, durability, air tightness, mold, paintability? Okay, so let's put, so I'm minded to say manufacturer. Let's tick a box to say there. I have no idea how we highlight this change. What is the type? Oh, we're talking about smoke dampers here, by the way, in case we don't know. So there's the automatic, what they're the, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're the things that work inside compartments of buildings, so across between spaces, but also in the air conditioning, and they act to firewall off. In the event of a fire alarm, they block and stop the air from being circulated through the building, fans and that sort of things, rather than, so they prevent the spread of smoke through the building rather than evacuating it, which is a different kind of system, right? So they're not vents to the outside, they're stopping smoke from going around inside the building. Again, non-technical description, correct me if I'm wrong. So type, okay, I guess that's going to come from the contractor. I'm not going to read these out one at a time. We just want to read these in our own heads and then say, can anybody tell me what's Pascal terms? What resistance is required in Pascal terms? Do you know that?
So Pascal's a unit of pressure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
So obviously, if it's pressurized, you know, and you've got something shut, it's gonna.
If it's an express lift shaft or something, there's going to be quite a lot of pressure with the lift going up and down. So okay.
And so what's supplier in this column G?
As opposed to the main contractor or the trade contractor, I guess that'll be
the
Jewson's.
supplier. Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, the supplier is the person from which the contractor would buy it.
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
Okay.
So then
So
you would
I think
expect
in that regard,
material type, all of those things as well.
if you think about, for instance, what service maintenance is required, I doubt if the supplier would actually provide any specification. Because if in terms of, if this is, yes, someone who's selling the products, they don't really add anything on top of the manufacturer's information.
I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't think, Martina, that the supplier would provide us anything here unless the supplier provides some form of warranty outside the manufacturer, maybe.
So like when we have the second question, what is the type? So I think going by the first answer, they are quite related with each other. So manufacturer would include more information, material types, and all the technical side.
Okay.
In terms of the type, though, is it the type that's been specified or the type that's been the type of the actual iteration? So it is the act built, okay. In which case the type then will be confirmed by the manufacturer.
Yeah. And the main contractors, they've selected that, so that's the information route is through. So it's not the originator of this. I think this is who's going to be providing the information, who's responsible for it. Okay.
I don't really understand line 5, what the question is.
It's the movement of structure and services. Okay. Let's put a comment in. I'm assuming everybody's had my email, but you should have a copy of this.
Yeah.
Let's have had any bounce backs. Yeah, I haven't done any bounce backs, so you can have a scroll up and down on this as well. Silly question. So location, really stupid thing. Is the person who's commissioning it not going to be the person who's confirming the location? Because you could have you might have multiple instances, and we need to know which one it is that they're providing.
Well, I guess it's saying who's responsible for it. So the designer would say where it is, and then a contractor would install
Position
it.
it, right? Okay.
I guess again.
Is there anything that the operator? Oh. Crikey. Okay, come on to that.
I mean, there's a lot of tick boxes against the supplier, but I think it's probably worth rethinking the role of a supplier. Well, this is new build. I haven't been involved in new build. I don't know how active the suppliers are, but you would just think it's more like a platform for buying the products. But they seem to be ticked almost in every single section.
Yeah, like number 14. I don't know why they would be. Can damper be positioned to allow access for maintenance?
Yeah.
I don't know why a supplier would be responsible for that.
Yeah, same with row 11. I would have thought the supplier it wouldn't be responsible, but the contractor would if they're the ones that are putting it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. We've already made more edits than we did at DCW, but they have changed the way that this is working actually. So this is completely. I haven't really seen this before.
Similarly, row 12. If you're suggesting what other requirements are there, that I would have thought would have come from the client and the designer, not necessarily coming from the supplier, the main contractor, or the trade contractor. Because
no, quite. Yes.
I mean, I think from a housing association side, I would expect everything to come through either the principal contractor or principal designer. So
apart from when we're requesting something from them, that's why I thought perhaps 12 was more us requesting a certain thing rather than
yeah,
them requesting something of us.
yeah.
Uh,
What about row 18? Is the client going to say, is it a holistic approach for dampener? Is the design appropriate for damper? Is the design approach, oh sorry, I can't read, for damper holistic? That's
yeah,
not gonna be, that's,
I would have thought that we wouldn't have been providing that.
no.
No.
I'd expect that to come from the designer and the installer, but not the supplier. The supplier can't
No.
possibly know, can they?
No.
That's, you know, overall solution, not individual components. If we can get that to turn off, right. What does this mean? What supports are needed for continuous support during fire? Fire rated channels, supports, anchors. Is that literally physical attachments?
Yeah, I would have thought
So
that.
to make sure it continues working
Yeah.
during a fire event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Think so, yeah.
And is that not going to be designer then?
Yeah.
The designer is going to say, for this thing to stay put, we need these holding bars here. And
They would say that, but they probably wouldn't provide the information, would they?
What's been installed? No.
Again, that's going to be back to the main contractor because they would have to provide the as-built.
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So if we had to replace it, we'd know what we needed to put in as a replacement.
So just going back to Pascal terms, is the main contractor not going to provide the resistance required, or even the designer?
Well, I would have thought that would be part of the specification of the product, in which case it would be coming from the supplier, the
Manufacturer, right? Okay,
or the contractor. Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Well, no, I think the designer would look at the space and understand what resistance would be required, and then select from manufacturer to say, I need this level of resistance.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I was looking at it from the other perspective of the manufacturer telling us what resistance is required, as opposed to, you're right, looking at it from the other side, are we prescribing to the manufacturers what the specification of the product is, in which case, you're right, the designer
For product selection,
would be the one that would say, this is what this is what we require in terms of resistance, and you've got to provide a product that meets that specification.
Yeah. So I'm going to tick the box designer. Okay, I'm going to scroll down a bit, and I'm sorry, I sort of read in all directions, as my brain doesn't work perhaps like everybody else's. That's what I tell myself anyway. I'll start reading from the top, get bored, and then start from the bottom and come back, and then meet in the middle at some point if we're lucky. And 21, are we not going to be saying what areas we want to inspect? We'd like to have a look at the back left flange, please.
I don't think that we'd specify that.
No.
Great example. I think it's more likely that the manufacturer would specify that, and the main contractor would tell us as part of effectively the O&Ms.
Okay. What are the limitations? What does that mean?
Would that perhaps mean what can impact on the performance of that product? So some limitations if cannot be installed in certain types of buildings maybe or environments, something like that.
Okay, okay. So yeah, on the spec, don't, you know, it's not for underwater installation or whatever. Yeah.
So what is the lifespan? Wouldn't that come from the specification and then it just filters down to the client? So it's not, I don't think the client can dictate the lifespan of a product, but just hold that information.
Yeah, but we might spec a longer, more expensive lasting component if we think we've got this building for 50 years and we only want to, you know, we don't want to replace it in that time. We might spec a 50-year smoke damper and then they've got to go off and find one that's made of gold or something. I guess that feeds both ways. It's a bit of an iterative loop. The supplier's going to tell us the thing you've chosen is going to last 10 years. We're going to tell them we want it to be 20 or 30.
It's interesting looking at 21 and 32. They seem to be almost the same sort of question.
Inspections and inspection and duct cleaning. Yes, okay. Okay, put a comment in on that, like that one. Okay. Okay. I'll scroll down a bit further, but I think we're nearly there. Yep. Fantastic grammar. Should the installation seals, or how should the installation seals be checked around the outside? Again, that's manufacturing, that's fine.
I find that row 26 quite interesting about security to protect. I think some of it probably will come from the client because they may want to, they may be aware of some local conditions.
Yeah, that's diplomatically put.
Of...
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we need a particular type of security screw on this because we've got teenagers who are prone to fiddling with them and pulling the bolts out. Yeah.
I think a supplier may just, a manufacturer, assume that in the ideal world, nothing is, you know, nobody will tamper with the equipment, so they wouldn't know exactly what's required to protect it.
Yeah, I mean, at our place, we wouldn't have that problem because all of our tenants are impeccably behaved. Yeah, they've never dream of doing that.
Yeah. You've got that utopian vision when at the outset of the project, I suppose.
And besides that, they find it really difficult to undo a bolt with a machete.
Right. Let's have another run through. I think we've made quite a bit of changes and we've still got, well, we're halfway through our time, so we've done this pretty quickly, I think. If I've understood the challenge correctly. So I suppose, okay. So I think we've had time to have a look through this. In terms of getting a bit more meta, if I just save that and I will share that with people. So I suppose just picking up on your point, Jack, and Gary backed up as well, is what information, because what I think I'm trying to get from this process is clarity on what information we should be asking for, so that we can build out the asset information requirements at the start of a new build process. So is this the wrong? I mean, you suggest this is the wrong approach, but what are you looking for in asset information requirements, or are you thinking about getting information on smoke dampers at this level of detail, or going more? Is it more technical?
No, so well, I think for me to start with, it's working in operations. It's we have the Fire Safety Act in, we've got the Building Safety Act, about to come, and I don't really want to hear about new build. We've got loads and loads of existing high-rise buildings, and all we hear about is, we get this information right at the start, and well, I'm sorry, that's not the case. We need to get it right.
They're going to capture now, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of first off a little bit by the by, but yeah, it's we struggle with ownership of our buildings, if we own them or not. So technical details for smoke dampers is quite far down the list of what we need to do, and I think we're kind of overreaching at the moment in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I would like to be able to say, yes, we know where all the smoke dampers are within our existing buildings, but we don't. So the first step is to find out where they are, locate them, identify them, and have a full register. The next is to gather technical information about it, but that's down the line. And then once we have that technical information, then we see how we use it. We can all sit here and say, this is the information we need. To be honest, we will find out what information we need when we start to utilize that. At the moment, we might get someone to go out and look at a building, but we don't give them any information. So, the next step is we do give them information. And it will be once we're starting to work with them on that, we will understand, okay, we give you this information. Is that useful to you? No. We give you this information. Is it useful? Yes. Okay. But I think, sorry, just very quickly, I think it's a very iterative process. And I think the idea that we can define exactly what we need at the start, I'm not sure it's the best way to be going.
Yeah. I'm of a similar view, because I look at the critical information that we need, to sort of manage the building. And to be honest with you, it takes, smoke dampers for argument's sake. As long as I have a make and a model and a framing product sheet for that I can go and have a look and read all of the, tiny details on, the length, the breadth, the density, the Pascal rating. 9 times out of 10, we're not going to, be using that information on a regular basis. We want to know the location, the manufacturer, and the model, the model number of it, and all that sort of thing. And perhaps if they've got something where it's a serial number, have the serial number and the installation date, and then we can manage the servicing, inspection routines. If something goes wrong, we can go back and say this is, the type that we used in that building. But as I said, all of the minutiae of that information we'll probably never use, and that's my view on it. I think that just getting to that stage would be nice. Just. And like you said, I think we're overreaching ourselves by trying to get down to these hundreds of different little bits of information for each type of product, when 9 times out of 10 we don't need it. We just need access to that information on the rare occasion that we do need it, be it whether it's a PDF product sheet or an online library that we can Google to get that product sheet.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah, I agree with the guys. I think we're starting from a very, very low base, unfortunately, and I think the sector knows that. How much the HSE recognise that, I don't know. I also agree with what George said at the very beginning. When you look at all of the data dictionaries that are currently out there, there's billions of bloody data sets, most of which are not going to be relevant for us. So I think being a selfish asset manager, what I want to focus on are the core bits of information that are going to make me be able to do my job every day and be confident that our customers are safe. And for me, that's about, as Jack said, understanding that, for example, we know where we have dampers, because I don't think we do as a sector understand that consistently. Understand what part what they do, and what level they're supposed to perform to in a really simple sort of sense. But testing and designing whether that's adequate for me isn't part of this process. This isn't a risk assessment process for me. I think the data that we're collecting enables us to do our job, and some of that data might form part of a risk assessment, but I don't think that's what I'm really focusing on here. The building safety case and having people who understand the spread of fire and how buildings react way better than we do will need to consider some of those things. For us, it's about keeping things working in that sort of state, knowing the properties that they have, so that when we replace them, we can replace them with something that's the same, and ultimately having the certification that says somebody competent has done that, and having that sort of assurance, and when it needs to be serviced, and what is that servicing, what cert do I need from that servicing. It's simple stuff like that. Jack's right, this will be iterative. As we go through, we will find out we probably need more information, but I'm not sure we'll get it all right from the beginning.
Okay, Mazina, sorry, yep.
Yeah, I mean, I totally support what the colleagues said. I think my background is more at the point of asset management taking over from the new build, but perhaps the golden thread is about finding out really what at different stages different people want to provide and need to provide, but how much really has to come down to asset management for the asset data information. So maybe not everything has to be passed down, therefore maybe that machine readable formats and the information we get doesn't need to contain all of this, but perhaps at certain stage it needs. But as the golden thread goes through and passes to the maintenance side, it can shrink, it just gets smaller and more focused on maintenance and replacement, the cost, locations, access, all that stuff.
Okay.
I think also, Alex, so one of the things that I think is key, and maybe we're not particularly discussing here, is from my point of view, when I'm managing assets, so there are certain pieces of information. Let's say fire door is 30 minutes, and the requirement for that door is 30-minute fire door. I might have another one that is 30-minute requirement. I've got a 60-minute fire door in there. Now, I want to be able to access that information in a database. So if I'm creating a program of works, I can say, these are all the places where I have 30-minute fire doors. Now, if we need to look at something in detail, glazing or, the type of hinge used, then I don't. That's not something I necessarily, certainly at this stage, maybe further down the line, that I necessarily want to be able to access in a database. That can be something where it is, looking at a fire door, so we're not a great example perhaps, but I'd be willing to look at a data sheet, that wouldn't necessarily need to be machine readable. I could say, well, these are the types of whatever I have, and I'll go in and look at documents. And I think we need to make that distinction between what we need in a database for programming, for a product recall, for whatever it might be, and what information. Look, if you are wanting to understand this, how this building might perform in great detail, then you go into a document. But the idea of keeping a database up to date with all this information in is unnecessary and too onerous.
Yeah, it comes back to what I was saying about the make and model. Providing you know the manufacturer and which model the door it is, you can then go and look at the product sheet if you want to find out any other information.
Yeah. Sorry, could I just contribute there? So in 10 years' time, when that door manufacturer has perhaps been taken over by somebody else or has gone bust, or the information isn't available, knowing what the original I'm under it was, for
George,
example.
you should just have that product data sheet stored within your document library. It's not saying that you go online and find something. When we get installed, we get a specification. And we own that information, but it does not need to sit within a database.
No.
Sorry, what I was saying was that what I was intending to say was that if the data sheet doesn't contain the information that you need, which certainly can be the case, then that becomes an issue, and it means that people have got to manually check the documents. I'm not pushing this. What I'm saying is that the industry is moving beyond just everything being held as documents, right? I'm not saying that we should be doing that today, right? But having all the different product manufacturers all produce their data sheets in a different format that then people have got to go and manually check is challenging. And the second thing is that now the contractors are responsible under the Defective Premises Act for liability. They are actually starting to move towards this point of having the information in a machine readable format. That doesn't mean that you as asset managers have to do anything differently. What I'm saying is that that's the direction of travel.
Yeah, I think we're all for machine readable. It's we're not saying that there's anything against this, but going through that list, and looking at what is being asked in certain situations, it feels like we're trying to run before we can walk. I think everyone here wants to do things differently, wants to do things better, but the idea that we will know exactly what if we send out a specialist to an existing building with something, or a new build with something else, and the idea that we would know exactly what information would be relevant to them, and of course we don't think just a document will suffice, because that just tells you what has been installed, and we need to know design intent. But I think that is more, we're not breaking it down into that. We're not breaking it down into what's design intent, what's installed, and what information do we need there. We're not saying what should be database easily accessible and what is just okay to sit within a document. We're not talking about the information we're receiving and how we're receiving it. This is just, where does the information come from for a new build, and it's not that isn't necessarily that relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, okay. I think the challenge is that we don't know what the regulator is going to be looking for in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time. We don't know what things are going to happen, what disasters are going to happen going forward, which there probably will be to some extent, that then will cause people to say, well, what material was that actually made of? And was that information adequate in the data sheets? So that's all I'm saying. And I think at the moment the list of properties that have been suggested by the subject matter experts that have been attending the sessions, that's a long list. We don't need to. You don't need to use them all. And in fact, actually, it might well be that we filter out. The teams filter out what's not needed. But that is information that has been asked for by the people who say that's important. People that are specialists in penetration seals, for example, they're saying that this information is important.
Yeah, but so George, I've sat in on some of those, and I've sat in on a lighting one where someone said if the walls were painted, we'd need to get a lighting engineer out there to work out the difference in lux. Now, I'm not saying that went in or anything like that, but some of the understanding between what might happen in a design for a new build and what happens in actual asset management, there is a gulf there that is not being bridged, and I think the continued focus on new build and what happens there is perhaps to the detriment of actually getting something that will work operationally.
Yeah,
And I think if I can say, I mean, like Jack, you say, there's the difference between yes, the design stage, the build. I think there may be a lot of information that's needed about the product specification, but maybe also in terms of, for instance, the information how it's presented. For instance, this list of, that we were looking at looked a bit complicated. There were questions people didn't understand. But if it's broken down into groups, so we say that the maintenance related information is provided separately, the material specification, the installation specification, they are just kind of grouped as well, so that maybe just certain sections are just absorbed by the asset management, for instance.
Martina, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is take the raw unstructured data, which is what we're talking about here. We want to refine the questions, because the questions are really just points that people, it is a brain dump from the people that were in the round tables that were saying, this is important to me. Now, what we've got to do is refine those. And as Jack's saying, it may well be that there's questions in there that aren't necessary. And that's a matter of that process. The fact is, though, on new build, unless we start to ask for better quality information from the supply chain, then you will never have it.
But for a start, George, that's not true, because we maintain buildings, so we replace doors, so we do get information. We go out and we produce it for existing buildings. And so Alex, we'd finished the bit that we're working on. Alex was asking us more generally about things, and so that's what we're discussing. And I think there is just such a kind of blind spot to existing buildings, and existing buildings dictate currently how we work. And I think that, it just feels overlooked. And so that's the point I was trying to make to Alex, and think about how we manage, and then how other stuff can fit into that, whether it's new build or not.
I apologise. I'm sorry, I was out.
That's fine. That's okay. We've got to go back to the main meeting now because it's 1:15. So we've got to go back and do our wrap session, if that's okay. So I've got the spreadsheet. Thank you for your inputs. I'll copy you in on the correspondence, but I'll feed that back to Richard and Jis, and we'll see you back in the main meeting. So you've got to leave this meeting and then go back to the other one. Okay. See you on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. That was really good discussion.